Hey guys, how are you doing today? It's P.E. Gilbert, your blogger, writing consultant, and the author to the fantasy novella, The Sultan's Daughter. And today we are going to discuss a recent blog post that George R.R. Martin wrote in which he hit out at fans who point out when he misses a deadline for The Winds of Winter. But before we go any further with today's video, hit that subscribe button. In case there is a penguin on the Antarctica who has not heard of George R.R. Martin, he is the author of the fantasy saga A Song of Ice and Fire, which was adapted into the TV show Game of Thrones. George has been writing the series since 1991. He published A Game of Thrones, the first in the series, in 1996, A Clash of Kings in 1998, A Storm of Swords in 2000, A Feast for Crows in 2005, and A Dance with Dragons in 2011. But since then, we have all been waiting for the sixth in the series, The Winds of Winter, and this year marks 10 years since the last book came out. Yes, fans had the thrill and the disappointment of Game of Thrones in the meantime, plus in 2018, George published Fire and Blood Part 1, which is a chronicle of the Targaryen kings from Aegon I to Aegon III, part of which will be adapted into a new HBO TV show, House of the Dragon, which we will discuss a bit later in this video. But none of that negates the fact that what we are all eagerly waiting for has not come out yet. Will The Winds of Winter be released anytime soon? That question was answered in a recent blog post that George wrote on the 2nd of February, titled Reflections on a Bad Year. In that blog post, after telling us that he thought 2020 was probably the worst year I have ever lived through for the country and the world, if not for me personally, due to the pandemic, or rather the Dark Lord that shall not be mentioned. In addition, George wrote that 2020 was a good year because we dumped Trump. That was far and away the best thing to come out of 2020. We went out ugly, of course, the same way he came in, the same way he governed. What a vile, vile man. George's political views are exactly why so many people, myself included, go to his blog. Forget The Winds of Winter. It's to hear that he is happy that Trump was voted out of the White House. Well, if that makes George happy, and makes him write The Winds of Winter faster, then who could argue with 2020's election result being a bad thing? Finally, George wrote about his progress with regards to The Winds of Winter. You know, the thing that fans go to his blog for. He wrote, what was good about 2020, besides the election? Well, for me, there was work. I wrote hundreds and hundreds of pages of The Winds of Winter in 2020. The best year I've had on WOW since I began it. Why? I don't know. Maybe the isolation, or maybe I just got on a roll. Sometimes I do get on a roll. I need to keep rolling, though. I still have hundreds of more pages to write to bring the novel to a satisfactory conclusion. That's what 2021 is for, I hope. All fans, myself included, are pleased to hear that 2020 was a productive year for George, in his opinion. But if I were you, I would not get excited about the release of The Winds of Winter anytime soon. If memory serves me well, didn't George say in his 8th of November blog post that he had not been progressing well in August and September, and possibly even in October? To recap, he wrote back then, I was really on a roll back in June and July. Progress has continued since then, but more slowly. I suffered a gut punch in early August that really had me down for a time, and another, for different reasons, in early September. But I slogged on, and of late I am picking up steam again. Also, in the same 8th of November blog post, he wrote, in addition to turning out new chapters, I've been revising some old ones, some very old, including, yes, some stuff I read at conferences ages ago, or even posted online as samples. I tweak stuff constantly, and sometimes go beyond tweaking, moving things around, combining chapters, breaking chapters in two, reordering stuff. Thus, it sounds like his productiveness on The Winds of Winter throughout 2020 should be qualified. It sounds like he did a lot of editing over the course of the last year, meaning that he might not have progressed with the book as much as he would have liked, or is making out. If you are feeling a little down now about George's progress, or lack thereof, with The Winds of Winter, then to salt your wounds, George hit out at us, his fans, who want to read his next A Song of Ice and Fire book. He wrote, "I will make no predictions on when I will finish. Every time I do, arseholes on the internet take that as a promise and then wait eagerly to crucify me when I miss the deadline. All I will say is that I am hopeful." It's always nice when your favourite author calls you an arsehole for having the audacity to point out how many deadlines he's missed. What George is referring to here is, or was, the promise he made on his blog in 2019 when he wrote, "If I don't have The Winds of Winter in hand when I arrive in New Zealand for Worldcon, you have here my formal written permission to imprison me in a small cabin on White Island overlooking that lake of sulfuric acid until I'm done." Well, New Zealand Worldcon came and went at the end of July of last year, but there was no sign of The Winds of Winter. Fans jokingly, or rather half-jokingly, took this as their cue to remind George of his promise, and to chain him to his desk to ensure that he finishes The Winds of Winter as soon as possible. Clearly, George did not like it that people remembered the promise he made. Moreover, this is not the first time that George has lashed out at fans either. In 2014, he told fans to go and do one for speculating about whether or not he will die before completing the series.
I find that question, pretty offensive, frankly, when people start speculating about my death and my health, so you to those people.
Okay, on that occasion, I'll give it to him. Maybe he had a fair point, as the question was a disgraceful one. Nevertheless, what is it about super successful fantasy authors hitting out at their own fans? You know, the people who gave them their millions. In April 2020, Patrick Rothfuss, the author of the Kingkiller Chronicles, who has also not published a book in his series since 2011, coincidentally, also told a fan to go and do one for asking if The Doors of Stone, the third book in his series, would come out at some point in 2020.
No offense, but use your head.
I don't get it. I and so many other authors, some of whom I have had the privilege of interviewing, would love to have the problem of a massive fan base asking about our next books, like George and Patrick do. It's the dream for an author, quite frankly. And yet, George and Patrick show no indication of appreciating what they have. It's very saddening, in my opinion. Lastly, George concluded his blog post on the 2nd of February by hinting at his other projects. I have a zillion other things to do as well, though. My plate is full to overflowing. Every time I wrap up on one thing, 3 more things land on me. Monkeys on my back, aye aye, I've sung that song before. So many monkeys. And Kong. I will talk about all that in a different blog post. By a zillion other things, George is almost certainly referring to the TV adaptations of his various novels, for example, House of the Dragon, the upcoming HBO series that is based on his book Fire and Blood Part 1. House of the Dragon is a TV show that no one asked for, based on a book that no one wanted, and the show will cover the Dance with Dragons, the first Targaryen civil war, set around 150 years before Game of Thrones begins. Plus, on the 21st of January, Variety reported that HBO greenlit an adaptation for the Tales of Dunk and Egg. Again, where was the demand for this series? More puzzling is that the book series that it's based on is incomplete. You would have thought that HBO had learned its lesson from the Game of Thrones debacle about adapting an unfinished series, but evidently not. All these screen adaptations entail that George will spend less time on The Winds of Winter, as his energies are going to be occupied elsewhere. And this seems to be a bit of a theme with George in general. Why has it really taken him a decade to write the still incomplete The Winds of Winter? Let's say the book will be 100 chapters long. That means he had to write 10 chapters per year. That's not a lot for a full-time writer. In fact, that's very doable, even if each chapter is between 5,000 to 7,000 words long. Also, let's bear in mind that George had a head start on The Winds of Winter, as several chapters from A Dance with Dragons were pulled from the 5th volume because that book was too long. So what is taking him so long? In my opinion, it is a question of motivation. Years ago, George said in an interview, "I get bored if I know exactly what is going to happen." The fact that he said this is a worrying one for fans. George presumably has a very good idea about how A Song of Ice and Fire is going to finish. Yet the nearer he gets to the finish line, the less it seems he wants to actually get there. It's as if the ending doesn't interest him, bizarrely, which means that his focus goes elsewhere. This is backed up by something George wrote in his 2nd of February blog post, as he said that he was on a roll for much of 2020, whatever that means. And he has hinted about being on similar rolls in other blog posts as well. Yet, it seems like these rolls that he speaks about are rare occurrences, and that's the problem. Those roles come naturally when you are passionate about a project as you want to invest energy into it. I'm sure George still does want to finish The Winds of Winter, but it's not his only priority anymore, and it shows, or else how do you explain him writing and finishing Fire and Blood in 2018? I accept that Fire and Blood might have been easier to write than the multiple competing storylines and subplots of A Song of Ice and Fire. But still, if George would have had the same desire to complete The Winds of Winter as he did for Fire and Blood, something tells me that The Winds of Winter would have been published years ago. Perhaps in his heart, George knows that too, and that's why he has hit out at his fans. It doesn't excuse him calling us arseholes, but it does offer a reason for why he wrote what he did. And that's all I have for you today, guys. Thank you for watching/listening. I hope you have enjoyed this video and that it has given you a sufficient update on George R.R. Martin and his progress with The Winds of Winter. Like, comment and hit that subscribe button and tell me, what did you think of the video? Do you think George has the right to hit out at his fans and call us arseholes? Moreover, my debut fantasy novella, The Sultan's Daughter, is out. If you are waiting for The Winds of Winter and are looking for a book that contains Game of Thrones-esque political intrigue and three-dimensional characters whose decisions have consequences, then check out The Sultan's Daughter, as it is short, fast-paced and full of suspense. I have left a link for the book in the description below. Otherwise, until the next update on George R.R. Martin and The Winds of Winter, keep well. Once again, guys, I just wanted to say thank you so much for watching my video. I really appreciate it and I hope you've enjoyed it. Hit that subscribe button and then you will be the first to receive more awesome content from my channel, and I hope to see you again soon.